And welcome to you, and thank you for joining me. And I'd just like to thank everybody who has subscribed to the channel, because it's important to get the channel established as much as it can, so it can reach the people who would benefit from these videos and what I impart. So I thank you for that. And if you haven't subscribed, then it would be great if you did, because, as I say, it would really help the channel. So I thank you for that. So we're going to have a look today at the greatest challenge living the spiritual or more conscious life, and that is mastering the thinker, because the only barrier to spiritual liberation is the mind. And the mind, when it is fueled through its own independence, its own will, is a terrible master, as we know, because when we're afflicted through these emotional energies, this emotional negativity, such as anxiety, stress, tension, fear, that's all thinking, the thinking process at an intensified rate. And until somebody is really serious in the truth, it would not occur to them, as it doesn't in the majority of the people in the world, to examine the thinking process, the thinker inside of them, with any reality, because it's just assumed to be the normal way of things, to continually have an inner dialogue, to have the thinker yaketing, as I once wrote an article called Yakety Yak. It's named after a famous song in the 50s, and about the yakker that keeps yakking from the moment you wake up. Well, it's even in the dreams, on the periphery of the dream state. It's always yakking, always got something to say. And from the moment of awakening in the morning, I wake up, it yaks right through breakfast, lunch, dinner, and into the evening. It never stops. Yakety, yakety. And it's a good description of the background of the thinker. It's always there. So people assume that that's the way things are. And indeed, it's the normal mode of our reflective intelligence to have this thinker, this inner dialogue. But it's not the natural state. And should ever the thinking process stop, which does happen to people, happens quite, it's quite common for it to stop quite randomly. The feeling is of great shock and bewilderment, because I feel I'm going mad. I feel I've lost something so intimate to me. And the significance of the stilling of the mind is often overlooked, just passes by. When I was, must have been a teenager in the 70s, the 1970s, in the UK, there was a documentary that left a great impact upon me and many people, because I can remember speaking about it, discussing it with classmates at school, about a man who lost his memory. And the documentary followed the man during a few weeks of his life. And he had this rare disease, or whatever it was, this brain malfunction disease, whereby he was continually in a state of forgetfulness. And he lived with his wife, who cared for him and loved him. And in the moment he knew that she was his wife, when he was there in front of her. And when she went into the next room, he just forgot. He didn't know he was married. And we followed the progression of his degenerative disease. And it was so touching. There was so much pathos there, because the man was just totally bewildered. And he uttered that he felt like every moment he was dying, because something was continually being taken away from him. And what endured within him though, was the love of his wife. It was always there. He said, I know I love my wife. And the love of his art. He was a musician. Never left him. During the everything else that was forgotten, he retained the knowledge of his love and of his creativity. And that was significant, wasn't it? And because ultimately that is all that is left, is my love of what I have deemed of value through my earth existence, what I have discovered of true value, what I love, that endures. And the creativity behind that, the creative spirit, the human spirit. And with the man who lost his memory, it was significant in other ways because later on, when the whole life changed for me and for you who are watching this, the whole spiritual impulse, we are endeavouring to replicate what happened to the man who lost his memory, but in a different way, with a different emphasis, because what happened to him, to this man, was that it was forced upon him. It was he had no. It wasn't voluntarily invoked. It was imposed upon him, and so he was bewildered. The poor man, he didn't know what was happening. And yet, for anyone truly inspired to unite with their own inner reality, this is the very process. As I enter a state of, willingly, a state of forgetfulness of the last moment, which is not then seen to be death, but realized to be life, the purity of life everlasting, continually renewing itself, but without any taint of past or memory. So it's amazing, isn't it, how life demonstrates through people's lives the truth, how it operates in our ordinary living lives. So mastering the thinker is a great discipline, but it yields great knowledge for anyone who is willing to put into practice the mastering of the thinker. So the first thing really to see is the psychology of thinking, what's behind it. And it's to see that a thought is not thinking. It's very subtle, yet fundamental perception that, a single thought is not thinking, because these flash images appear in the intellect random, regardless of the state of what is realized inwardly. Even at the deepest levels of consciousness, random image will flash across the intellect. But the idea is not to allow it to move. And we do that through practice, because the normal mode is to go with, I think of somebody from school, let's say, or haven't seen for 20, 30 years, and there's through association to that image, I start to roll the camera, then the film in the camera starts to move. That's the normal mode. And what we are endeavouring to do is to halt it in its tracks. And we do that not through force, not for utilising any force or suppression, but through being conscious and present in the body. Because, as I've said before, what I make conscious, what I am conscious of, within that consciousness is knowledge, an inherent knowledge. And that knowledge is preserved within the stillness of the of the being, stillness of being. So when I am more conscious, I am present in the body and in the senses, the image, random image will appear, and I can just hold it in my consciousness. It becomes quite natural after a while. And then it starts to, it cannot sustain itself, and it disappears then, just like a something fading out, just dissolves. But ordinarily, a random image appears and we give it life by thinking about what that image represents through association, and away we go down the stream of thought. So that's the psychology. A thought is not thinking. And so we're pulling back really from the identification with the mind, the projection of mind. That's what we're doing. Perhaps the greatest aid to mastering the thinker is this, because I will see very often that I've been thinking. Oh, I've missed it again. I can see I've been on another loop. I've been thinking for 2 or 3 minutes. And the inclination, the feeling, is to judge myself as having failed. Oh, I failed again. I haven't failed, because in the moment that I see that I've been thinking, of course I am free of the thought. I'm free of thinking. So it's really an exercise of humility to not judge what is happening, not to judge that I have failed in some way when I haven't failed. See the subtlety and the power really that behind the projection of thought. So I see myself, I've been thinking again. When I don't judge that I've been thinking, I'm back then in the slate is wiped clean. It's a clean interface again, and I have another opportunity to just be in the state of no thought. When I start to put that into practice, I will have much greater success for longer periods of no thought. And I can just enjoy then being present and start to appreciate the more subtle state that is within the body consciousness. Because thinking, it is a coarse energy. Becomes a grinding when fueled by the emotions. Because the mind is really the mental aspect of our inner system. It's called mental, intellectual. And in itself, the thoughts are mechanical. But what gives the thought or the thinking process its body is the emotions. We become identified when the thoughts can become attuned to an emotional feeling. We're in the grip then, there's a circuit, an inner and outer circuit as it were, of emotion, and it's coming out of the mind then. And we've got, I'm feeling then, I go into the past, and that's how anxiety, tensions arise. And we become tight inside because we've got this process going on. And it takes an energy, you see. Thought, everything that happens within us takes an energy from our finer energies. So I have to put into practice getting my life right, tidying up my external affairs, my relationships, because otherwise I'm going to be inwardly disturbed. I'm going to be disturbed by something that's not right out in, not been harmonized in my relationships, in my external life. And I'm going to be thinking about that, because I can only think about something that has happened in the external world, in my external circumstances. When I've started to get things, as I say, tidied up, more harmonized outside, I automatically start to get some inner peace, because there's not so much to think about then. Everything is more in its place, in its right place. So it's a total practice. It's a total practice. I have to spend time in the body, becoming more conscious of the workings of the inner self, because otherwise I'm going to be overwhelmed by what's happening, by these emotions. So as I start to make progress, what I'm doing is that my whole system is slowing down. I'm starting to become more still, more inwardly still. And through necessity, I'm going deeper into the body. And within our body consciousness are areas that have yet to be enlightened. There are areas that are very turgid, very coarse energies. And I have to enter through my consciousness, through my stillness. I have to pass back through these areas of the body. Because our body, it really is a walking body of time. And the brain and body are all products of billions of years, we can say, of evolutionary time. Because the whole purpose of life was really to make the first life form on Earth, which was the rock, to make the rock move, to make it pliable. And our physical bodies and all the species are the product of this enormous undertaking of making the rock, the hardness of matter, move and become what's more intelligent. And that was the whole process of life on Earth. Extraordinary thing. And so that rock, that age when we were petrified, the matter was petrified, is a kind of a geological age that we have within us, and which is really the stock of our brain, is the rock. But it's gone through an extraordinary purification process, all the ages, plant age, animal age, and the cosmic dimension that gives us human beings our sense of sapience, our knowing discernment. It's the whole process of bringing intelligence into matter. So we have to pass back, on the way back to our original purity, our original state of innocence. I have to pass back these billions of years energetically that are still within us, within the body consciousness. And so when we feel inertia, when people feel the whole weight, as they say, of the world upon them, they are connecting with the rock, the geology, the psychology of the geological age that is still inside of us. And somehow I have to, through my own system, I have to transform that through my consciousness, through my stillness. And all the other ages are working. We're an admixture of them all working within us. But it is the cosmic dimension in us that enables us to rise above our material psychology and heritage. But as I say, the idea was to make the rock think. And originally, in primitive man, it wasn't easy to get the brain to think. It had none of the fluidity. The original thinking was very, it was like block, just one frame at a time. And it took aeons of time, we can say, for the frames of thought to reach anything like what we experience today. And what happened when human nature started to envelop us and we became enamored with this, our own creativity, we started calling up at the past through the images, because we could do that through our creative faculty of self-reflection. And one thing led to another, and we became over time attached to the thinking process, which unbeknown was gathering momentum all the time. And eventually it united the thinking process with the emotional body of self to become one entity of self, that people now identify with and as. The whole spiritual task is to get back, isn't it? To reclaim my original ground. And we do this through the mastering of the thinker. So I have to put into practice this. I have to be willing to do this, because it's not an easy task. And as I say, I will fail regularly, and I must resist judging myself as having failed. And the whole key really to mastering the thinker is being conscious and present within the body. And we do that through being still, through anchoring the mind, as we've done before, on the one feeling, which is the pure sensation that is always pulsating within the body. It never changes. It's the one permanent quality of this existence, is our sensating life, the life within each body. And I can anchor the mind on that. And when the mind is anchored onto something, it's like a boat that casts its anchor, that gives it that security on the waves. You can just hold it then steady. So I'm anchored to something real. And when I'm present and conscious within the body, the thought process naturally becomes more still and eventually reaches that still point. And when I discover the simplicity and profundity of that, it does much to give me a much greater confidence in mastering the thinker, because I can see in my own experience it works. No thought, I'm conscious, I'm present in the body, and my mind is still, my mind becomes more still. And because for a long time, the mind, it resists stillness, because it equates stillness with a state of madness. It equates, so like I said earlier, during the lifetime, life demonstrates often through stilling the mind. The mind becomes incredibly still, and people become so shocked by that, because really they equate that with a state of madness. Just as the man who lost his memory, kept forgetting. It was hell to him, because he thought he was going mad, and he couldn't appreciate the liberation of the state, because he hadn't entered it consciously through his own volition. So I have to overcome this pull to keep filling in the space with my world. I have to overcome the distractions and being distracted from being still. And it's an enormous pull. It's an enormous outer magnet to keep creating when this is the creative state, but it's in its passive state. It's the creative poise. It's the equilibrium that we all love. It's the state of love. It's the state of the before the Big Bang, before science's Big Bang. It's the state of still mind, where nothing happens. And I gradually, if not immediately, but usually gradually, begin to love this state. I gradually become attuned to its subtlety, and then its power, and then its glory. The glory of the still mind. The glory of the unity of the one. Because it is my very being, my very essence and truth is contained within this purity of space, this stillness. And then I can use my mind and the thinking faculty for what it's supposed to do in the world. It's supposed to, to figure out and make plans, see what I have to do, remember where I have to be at a certain time. All legitimate thinking, all right worldly application of the thought process. But that kind of thinking doesn't cause me any distress. Whereas of its own accord, thinking will latch on, as we've seen, to the emotions, make me tense, make me angry, generate excitement, generate depression. And I'll be locked in then to an inner conflict that is just impossible to get out of whilst I'm continually feeding it with my life, my vitality. So a big subject. I'll come into it from different directions in future videos, but it's something to look at, to practice, to be in the senses, to be conscious is the most productive way, the most direct way to master the thinker, because no thought then is able to move. When I do catch myself thinking, it's to desist from any self-judgment that I've failed, that I'm not doing it right, because I always have another opportunity. And I discover that I'm succeeding more and more. I have more periods of the absence of thought. And the virtue of that is that I can then start to enter more deeply the idea of my life. It starts to all the fragments then start to unify. I can hear the birds singing and unite with that, because I'm not coming from my head. I'm coming from a deeper place within the being. I'm coming from more the center of the body, more the solar plexus area. I'm more grounded. The two hemispheres, the lower and upper hemispheres, are united more. And I'll speak more of this in another video of how we go deeper into the body and consolidate that. So thank you for listening, and bye for now. Bye-bye.